Mark, we got a lot to talk about on this, so let's get right to your recap.
Our presence is requested. Ooh, who's their calligrapher? We're at Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, and boy, I could go for some fried calamar and gabagool right now. White Rabbit makes a Bugs Bunny reference, and Tombstone, the boss, walks in. He announces to the collected criminals in the room that his baby daughter is marrying a square, and yet none of them have bothered to RSVP. Typical New York wedding guest list with these RSVPs. Anyway, Hammerhead thinks it's not a good idea for all of them to attend, mainly because the Kingpin is on his way back out, and perhaps having every underworld character in one spot is a bad idea, especially since Fist's son, the Rose, was busted up by Spider-Man a few months ago. Tombstone likes to live on the edge and demands their presence anyway. What a father of the bridezilla, Dan. The crooks agree, and Hammerhead tells them to learn the electric slide, which, true story, was on my no playlist under any circumstances at my wedding back in the day. That and the chicken dance and YMCA. Do not play.
Fair enough.
So now we fast forward to the bachelorette party, and some of New York's finest Karens want to know why their RSVP table isn't available at the club. As it turns out, they've been bumped by Janice Lincoln and her party of supervillains, and really, who among us? Janice's law school friend Michelle is the typical square of the group, but these girls are ready to party. Meanwhile, Peter and Randy are off in Atlantic City in the world's saddest looking diner, and I'm half expecting DeMiro to come in with Charles Grodin with 39 cents to their names. Back to the ladies, the party goes up another level with the arrival of Felicia, and the girls have a mixed reaction to the world famous Spider-Man sidekick showing up. Michelle and White Rabbit have some snippy words, and that brings us back to Peter and Randy, and it sounds like no one Peter was supposed to invite to this soiree could make it, and Randy's getting suspicious. Back to the girls, and they're about to get their supervillain costumes. And again back to the boys, and Randy thinks Peter pulled a Peter here and forgot to invite people or invited them at the last minute, and really, who could blame him? Peter has been spending way too much time with his best friend Norman Osborn, mourning the loss of Kamala Khan, a character so vital to Amazing Spider-Man continuity, I'm almost remiss in not mentioning it here.
How long is that joke going to go on for?
As long as I say so, Dan. Back to the girls, and they're looking pretty trashed, but Janice and Felicia are aware enough to share a moment where Janice mentions part of what makes her so devoted to Randy is his commitment to wanting her to quit crime. Felicia gets a look in her eye, and that can't be a good look for her future prospects with someone that we know, right, Dan? Oof. Speaking of which, Peter and Randy are hanging out at a carousel, and good thing this isn't the Central Park carousel, or Frank Castle might have some wicked flashbacks and ruin Randy's bachelor party. Randy has a heart-to-heart with Peter, and he realizes Peter actually didn't screw up. His friends didn't show up because he's marrying a supervillain. Is this a redemption story for Peter? Talk about a backtrack. Send it to Tom Brevoort, Dan. Randy and Peter have a special moment and bro out before deciding that riding the carousel is a big no, but somewhere off panel, these two bros are riding that thing and we'd love to see it. So Peter quietly walks away and is confronted by Felicia, and they start to have the talk. Peter talks about not being a barrel of laughs lately, and it sounds like someone is listening to my criticism on this show. Anyway, Felicia asks him about why he doesn't try stopping her from committing crimes anymore, and he doesn't have a good answer beyond them going through the motions. Well, that's something you don't want to admit to someone you're dating, and indeed, they break up, and if Mary Jane isn't waiting for him on the next page, the internet riots. Alas, a riot has commenced. Instead, it's just Randy getting jumped by Janice, and they decide to have some fun before we fast forward to the big day. And it's a who's who of the Spider-Man universe. Aunt May, Betty Brant and her demon spawn, and Hammerhead. And Hammerhead gives Peter a tip to cover his cheap tux rental, and then the rest of the motley crew shows up, and Peter understands it's not going to be a boring day. Robbie visits with Randy to give him some comfort. Some southern comfort, right? Actually, who knows what's in the flask, but man, that's a great move, Robbie. Great move. Peter's spider sense is going off, but the ceremony starts, and naturally, Shotgun, an uninvited guest, shows up, and I'm really racking my brain to place this character. Dan, explain it to me, buddy.
Well, Shotgun is a character we haven't seen in I believe almost 30 years, at least in the Spider-Man world. I think he's a Captain America villain first and foremost, but he showed up most prominently in the Tom DeFalco, John Romita Jr. Spider Hunt story from the 90s. So, if you have any fondness for Spider Hunt, which is, I think, one of those stories that kind of got lost in the midst of, like, the end of the 90s kind of mess of Spider-Man comics. But, it's a Tom DeFalco story, and it's got JR art, and I got to think maybe JR had some fondness for Shotgun and thought, like maybe they could reincorporate him here or something. It's a character that didn't immediately spring to my mind, I will admit.
Gotcha. Well, Dan, maybe if you had checked the solicits like you usually do, you would have saw that one coming. But anyway, Tombstone cockily stands up to Shotgun thinking he's bulletproof, but oops, looks like those bullets pierced his skin. Spider-Man shows up to save Tombstone just in time, and now all hell is breaking loose. Madame Mask goes into a limo that Hammerhead conveniently blows up. While Spider-Man continues to fight Shotgun, Shotgun makes his escape by motorcycle and basically disappears into thin air, which brings us to a somber epilogue where Randy and Janice go their separate ways, and Peter reminds himself he can't make a mistake like letting his friend marry a criminal ever again. But also in this comic, Dan, as you alluded to in the intro, we got some short stories involving the resurrection of Kamala Khan, which I still won't bother to understand. We got a teaser for the new Superior Spider-Man story with Otto Octavius. We get the setup for Mary Jane becoming Jackpot, and also some visuals of her sharing a bed with Paul, just to make the internet truly melt down. It looks like we're getting a new Spider-Woman series that involves her trying to reunite with her baby while she was killed off for a bit by Dan Slott in his Spider-Man book. We also get a teaser for Spider-Boy. We got a couple of inventory stories about a crazed Spider-Man fan and stalker, and ducks. The Queen Goblin and Kraven are fighting and then doing other stuff with each other. And then, Lord have mercy on our souls, I'm not even going to entertain the last image of this book, Dan, with a description. And that's my recap.